Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak, the Korean government opens a creative economy innovation centre south of Seoul to nurture startups in emerging IT sectors. North Korea threatens to ruthlessly punish South Korea if it opens a UN human rights office in Seoul, as planned later this year. Plus, investigators say the co-pilot who deliberately crashed a Germanwings plane in the French Alps had been treated in the past for suicidal tendencies. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, March 31st here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. We start with the latest initiative to help entrepreneurs turn their ideas into businesses. Nearly half of Korea's creative economy centres are now open, and the latest edition opening outside of Seoul on Monday. Now, it's going to focus on supporting startups in the ICT sector and helping them hopefully branch out overseas. Our Lee Ji-yoon starts us off.
From messenger and internet portal Down Kakao to game mogul NCSoft, nearly half of Korea's IT firms call the Pangyo Techno Valley home. So it should come as no surprise that the country's 8th innovation center aimed at ICT convergence has opened up in Gyeonggido province. President Park Geun-hye was at the opening ceremony and announced $95 million in funding to help grow the creative tech industry. The area is set to become a testing zone for the Internet of Things, or the concept that all objects are connected to the Internet. Innovative new projects include a pilot to monitor local youth obesity through wearable devices. The ICT Innovation Center will also act as a financial technology or fintech hub, offering one-on-one mentoring connecting startup entrepreneurs and financial consultants, as well as local banking and credit card companies. But President Park stressed that the center looks outward, beyond Korea's borders.
앞으로 경기혁신센터는 전국 17개 혁신센터의 기업 정보를 DB화해서 해외 투자자와 매칭 서비스를 제공하고 해외 창업기관과 벤처 투자자, 전국 혁신센터와 대기업 등의 글로벌 네트워크를 두루 연계해서 유망 벤처 기업의 글로벌 진출을 적극 지원하게 될 것입니다. 이를 통해 판교는 우리 중소벤처의 글로벌 진출 베이스 캠프가 되고 경기 혁신센터는 믿음직한 세르파가 돼서 스타트업들의 해외 시장 개척을 안내하게 될 것입니다.
With help from these innovation centers, local firms will be able to exhibit their products abroad at events like the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas and the annual Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. Lee Ji-yoon, Arirang News.
And President Park Geun-hye has asked the heads of Korea's overseas missions to support Korean firms in expanding their business abroad and to help young Koreans find jobs around the world. At an annual meeting on Monday, the president talked about seeing great potential to build a new growth engine overseas, and particularly in the Middle East. President Park also asked the diplomats to spearhead Korea's cultural diplomacy, especially as Seoul plans to establish more cultural centres globally and export Korea's cultural contents. And referring to her unification plan, she asked that each and every mission do their part in securing international support for the initiative to set the stage for a unified Korea. Representatives from Labour, management and government are making all-out efforts to reach an agreement on how to reform the labour market. They have set Tuesday as the deadline to come up with a draft agreement. They have yet to agree upon how to best reduce the disparity between regular and temporary workers in terms of wage and working conditions, or on policies related to youth employment and reduction of working hours. Now, although some progress has been made, they have been having a tough time narrowing their differences. Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has also expressed a strong will to reach an agreement before the deadline. He noted the difficulties but said that reaching an agreement was vital to give the country's youth hope for a better future. And April is expected to be a crucial time for the Korean economy. Reforms to the civil pension system and the minimum wage have been on the negotiating table for months, and time really is running out for an economic recovery of sorts. Our Sun Jung-in has more.
The government is aiming to pull the nation out of the sluggish economy through structural reform in 4 major areas: the public sector, labor, finance, and education, while boosting domestic consumption to revive the economy. However, in April, policymakers will have to come to agreement on the process of reforming the civil servant pension system and on ways to revamp the overall labor market structure. A full-fledged negotiation on minimum wage is also set for next month, amid pressure from the government to raise the salary to increase overall household income. Deputy Prime Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has repeatedly stressed that April is a critical time for accomplishing the reforms. He promised tangible results by the end of the month. It won't be easy. Structural reform itself is a complicated task. It gets even more challenging when the administration, lawmakers, and unions can't find common ground. Questions also remain about whether the National Assembly will be able to pass 9 pending bills on economic revitalization during a month-long provisional session set to begin April 7th. With economic uncertainty still lingering, insiders say the Korean economic landscape will be shaped by the outcome of these structural reform efforts over the next month. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Now, the Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ji-yeol took over his role nearly 1 year ago to this day, and he started out strong, receiving a favorable evaluation from the market and the nation's political parties. But over the last 12 months, those early good impressions have really eroded away somewhat, with critics saying communication is not his strong point. Shin Se-min reports.
Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ji-yeol has received some criticism that he could do more to foster communication between financial bodies and the public, and that he has lost the public's trust. That's the exact opposite of what Lee promised to do last year when he took office. A total of 3 rate cuts also affected this assessment. Lee changed his fiscal policy course from maintaining to slashing the interest rate from 2.5 last August to 2.25%. Last month, rate cut to 1.75 came as a surprise, shocking many market watchers.
The Bank of Korea should be giving the market the right signal on changes to the key rate and create a kind of momentum for them. But that was not the case for the past year.
Snowballing household debt is fueling more dissatisfaction with the BOK governor, as well as the country's continuing feeble economic growth. Despite 3 cuts to the key rate since Lee took over, fears of rapid deflation still linger, with this month's Consumer Sentiment Index and the Business Sentiment Index both lower than last March, which was right before he took office. Korea's economic growth rate also fell from 1.1% in the first quarter of last year to 0.3% in the fourth quarter, staying in the 0% range. Some pundits point out, however, that the country's discouraging figures cannot be blamed solely on the governor.
The sluggish pace of recovery, despite the rate cuts, points to other factors that result in slow growth.
External factors such as slow global economic recovery on top of tumbling oil prices have also played a role in the economic slump. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, a widely expected U.S. rate hike and lower global oil prices are hinting at troubles ahead for emerging economies, and that also includes Korea, because the country's exports to emerging markets have taken a big hit during the first 2 months of the year. Our Kim Min-ji has more.
Korean exports to emerging economies took a dive in the first 2 months of this year, casting a cloud over the nation's economy. According to Statistics Korea on Monday, Korea's exports to 18 emerging economies came to nearly $37 billion in the January to February period, down 6.2% from the same period a year earlier. The decline is 3 times bigger compared to Korea's total exports, which dropped about 2% in the cited period. Emerging economies include China, Russia, and India. The decline is a concern for Korea as emerging markets make up about half of its exports, accounting for 45.1% in 2013. But that figure fell to 43.9% last year. Experts say the fall is linked to a widely expected U.S. Federal Reserve rate hike this year. The rate increase could trigger a rush of capital, which can weaken currencies and hurt stock markets of emerging economies. This, coupled with a sharp decline in global oil prices, has hurt oil-producing nations, some of which are also emerging economies. Korea's exports to these countries fell 4.4% in the first 2 months of 2015 compared to the previous year. Given these global conditions, experts say Korea's export outlook remains unclear, and export growth will likely be in the 1% range, down from 2.3% last year. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, in its latest warning to South Korea, North Korea has threatened merciless action against the South if it goes ahead with the opening of a UN office on Pyongyang's human rights that is set to open in Seoul. The regime's committee, which handles inter-Korean affairs, says Pyongyang will not just watch the opening of the office, saying that Seoul will be the target of ruthless punishment. It added that the South was making an unforgivable provocation against their dignity and regime. Seoul is set to open the office in the first half of this year. The possible deployment of the U.S. missile defense system known as THAAD to the Korean peninsula has been causing quite the stir in recent weeks. The U.S. is pushing to have the system in South Korea to defend against North Korea's missile threats. But does THAAD work that well anyway? In testing, it does look pretty good, but a defense official in Washington says the U.S. still has a number of issues to iron out. Our Kim Yeon-bin reports.
In flight testing, THAAD's hit rate is as impressive as it gets. Tested 10 times between 2007 and 2013. The U.S. missile defense system has a track record of 100% mission success. However, that hasn't stopped some defense experts in the U.S. questioning how reliable it really is. In a report submitted to the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee last week, the Pentagon's Director of Operational Test and Evaluation, Michael Gilmore, said the system has not shown steady progress in its ability to shoot down ballistic missiles in their terminal phase, pointing to examples where the system has some glitches and poor weather conditions during tests. Gilmore stressed that it was important to fix the problems at hand, as THAAD is supposed to be able to work at any time. He also highlighted the need for better training programs for troops who operate and maintain THAAD. The defense official noted that simulators used to train soldiers how to use THAAD are not a completely accurate representation of how the system works in real life, which could lead to errors when intercepting missiles. THAAD has been a hot topic of debate in Korea, as the U.S. has been pushing to deploy the system to South Korea, saying it'll better protect the country against North Korea's ballistic missile threats. Both governments say, however, that the issue has not been formally discussed. But with U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter scheduled to visit Seoul early next month, watchers speculate THAAD could be on the official agenda. Kim Yeon-bin, Arirang News.
China and Russia are both deeply against the possible deployment of THAAD to South Korea, saying such a move would threaten their national security. But the new South Korean ambassador to China says he doesn't understand why Beijing opposes the idea, as nothing has actually been outlined. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Kim Jang-soo said Seoul has held no technical discussions with the U.S. on the matter. When asked about North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's possible visit to China in the coming months, the envoy said Seoul is not against Pyongyang opening itself up to the outside world. Time now for a look through the global headlines. We're following this Tuesday morning from Seoul. For that, we turn to Eunice Kim, standing by at the news centre. Good morning, Eunice.
And good morning to you, Mark. German prosecutors are confirming that the co-pilot of Germanwings Flight 9525 had a suicidal past, but showed no such indication in recent years. Dusseldorf public prosecutor Christoph Kumpa told reporters Andreas Lubitz, suspected of driving his passenger plane into the Alps on purpose last week, had received psychotherapy treatment for suicidal tendencies several years before getting his pilot's license. He added recent doctor's visits had resulted in sick notes, but showed no record of desire to hurt others or to commit suicide. The prosecutors said they were still trying to identify the 27-year-old's motive for killing all 150 passengers and crew, adding they had not found a suicide note. Meanwhile, a 100-strong task force in Germany continues to investigate the crash. So far, 80 of the 149 victims have been identified via DNA. An official memorial service is set to be held on April 17th at Germany's famed Cologne Cathedral, attended by the country's president and chancellor to remember the deceased. And new this morning, a vehicle crash at the entrance of America's spy agency has ended with 2 people hurt and 1 suspect dead. Officials said 2 men dressed in women's clothing tried to drive their SUV through the gates of the NSA headquarters in Fort Meade, Maryland. One of the 2 men was shot by guards and later died, while the second man and a police officer were hurt. The FBI said the shooting scene was contained and had no reason to believe it was related to terrorism. NBC News reported that drugs and a firearm were found inside the stolen vehicle. Uzbekistan's authoritarian president has been re-elected to another term, handing him 5 new years in the office. The country's electoral commission said 91% of its electorate had cast their votes in Sunday's election. Preliminary results showed that Islam Karimov, who has led Central Asia's most populous country since 1989, took home 90% of those votes. Monitoring missions of former Soviet republics and China called the election open and democratic, while the OSCE criticized the vote for lacking a genuine opposition.
A car crash in Nepal has left 4 Korean tourists dead. Seoul's foreign ministry says a rental car carrying the tourists collided with a bus in the early hours of Monday morning, killing 2 men in their 60s and 2 women in their 50s. Another Korean man, also in his 60s, was severely injured and taken to a local hospital. The tourists were returning to the capital, Kathmandu, from the popular tourist town of Pokhara. Now, deadly crashes are common in Nepal because of poor roads, badly maintained vehicles and some reckless driving. Researchers in the United States have been busy designing robots that are designed to work alongside people. They say these droids could be used in the medical and housekeeping industries. Our Kang Jungho has the details.
It's not the nurse, but a robot that's handing a surgical scalpel to the doctor. It then passes scissors to the doctor when requested. Until recently, assembly line robots were not able to work alongside people, being that they were often too big, moved too swiftly, and were dangerous for humans to be around. But these so-called collaborative robots are smaller than their predecessors and move in a more controlled and meticulous manner. Experts say they could be utilized in various fields like the medical industry and housekeeping, further expanding the realm of robotics from auto and semiconductors.
Our research is motivated in part by the increasing number of Americans who are elderly or disabled and need assistance in their homes.
With the global market already warming up to the idea of private drones, companies producing these robots are jumping in on the action. And the growing competition and demand is raising expectations of enhanced productivity in the workplace as the problem-solving skills of humans combine with the strength and endurance of robots. 황지혜, 아리랑 뉴스.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2015 Kia Classic, where the Korean golfers look to win their 6th LPGA Tour titles in 7 tries, only to come up short as American Christy Kerr claimed her first title of the season. Despite Korea's Lee Mi-rim going strong during the first 3 rounds of the event, she would end up losing her lead on the 4th round as Christy Kerr storms through the 18 holes on the final day with an amazing 7 under on the day to finish off at 20 under par overall for a 2-stroke victory over Lee Mi-rim. A huge victory for the American as 6 Koreans would finish in the top 10, including Park In-bi, who would finish in 5th place, 2 strokes behind the 3rd place winner, Lydia Ko. Now, Korea and New Zealand might have a nice free trade agreement going on now, but at the Seoul World Cup Stadium later tonight, no free wins as the 2 sides are set for their matchup at 8 p.m. tonight. The 56th-ranked Taekook Warriors are undefeated against the 134th-ranked New Zealand team with 5 wins and 1 draw, but the bigger story in the match will be Cha Do-ri and his final appearance as a Korean national football team member. And manager Uli Stilke stated earlier he will be subbed out a few minutes before the end of the first half for a well-deserved ovation from the fans before his retirement ceremony takes place during halftime. Now going to the 2014-2015 Men's V-League Championship Series, the 8-time champions Samsung Blue Fangs were the heavy favorites going against the OK Savings Bank. Only OK Savings Bank crushed the Blue Fangs 3-0 in Game 1. And last night, Game 2 took place with the Blue Fangs looking to even the series. But holy cow, a new match, but same start for the OK Savings Bank as their defense against Leo Martinez helps them take the first 2 sets with ease, 25-22 and 25-20. And despite Samsung Hwajae trying to rally back in this match to avoid a 2-0 hole, Robert Landy Simone's 24 points and Song Myung-gun's 14 help OK Savings Bank with another 3-0 sweep, as they're now only 1 win away from their first V-League title. Now, Pittsburgh Pirates slugger Kang Jungho's short trip to the minor league camp gave him an opportunity to work out his hitting mechanics, leading to him hitting his 2nd home run of the spring against the Atlanta Braves on Sunday. And while his manager Clint Hurdle was pleased with him breaking out of his slump, questions remain whether or not he can hit at a major league level. But the Pirates insist that he will not start the season in the minors and hopes that his last game is just a preview of more things to come for the former Nexan hero, as his defensive ability should be an asset for the Pirates. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, microdust from Sunday afternoon continues to linger in the whole peninsula, so we are waking up to another dusty morning today, so be sure to have a protective mask. And it's shaping up to be a rainy afternoon today. It will get cloudier as the day goes on and will start to rain from the afternoon and falling for the rest of the day, so have a mask and umbrella handy on your way out. This rain could be mixed with the dust, but actually it will be very spotty rain as the most parts, including here in Seoul, will get less than 5 millimeters of precipitation. Jeju will receive the most amount, up to 30 millimeters. So it shouldn't be enough for clearing out all the dust in the air and relieve the dryness. And readings should be a tad cooler than yesterday, but still on the warm side, as the daytime high here in the capital will rise to 17. Daegu and Gwangju will rise to 22 and 18, and Busan will top out at 19 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju Island should see a high of 21, while Daejeon and Dokdo get up to 18. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's going to do it for now. Korea Today is coming up at the top of the hour. Have a great day and stay tuned to Arirang TV. Goodbye.
you.